sing for you.
All right, well, Brandi, thanks for sharing your story with us. We're in this series, Down in My Soul, and we're looking at joy in spite of hard circumstances, and we're looking at really challenging where our joy even comes from. If I had to summarize your story of joy, it'd be joy outside of my comfort zone. And what I know is that because of some difficult circumstances, some trauma from childhood, that your comfort zone had become pretty narrow, and you ultimately had really gotten to a place of pretty extreme isolation, and that God called you into community out of that. So help us to see a little bit of your story and how God got you to that place of connection.
Well, for about 10 to 12 years ago, I started struggling with anxiety. I developed OCD. I ended up developing like an agoraphobia. And I knew that I needed God, and I would push myself to just get to church a lot of times, and a lot of times I would have panic attacks in the middle of church, completely hidden to anybody else, but literally feeling like I was dying on the inside. But I knew that I needed to be with God. So.
And in spite of how difficult it was just to come to church, you eventually said yes to being on the praise team. And then some really difficult life circumstances led you to a place that you began to realize your need for even greater connection and community. Tell us about that.
Absolutely. About 2 years ago, my sister committed suicide. And up to that point, I had not committed to a small group. I hadn't visited one because my anxiety was so rough on me that I was just afraid. And it was David King and the worship team. He rallied together some people that really just displayed a type of love that I will be forever grateful for. They provided us meals, they were praying for us, and just helped me realize how important small groups were. And that's actually what kind of ignited the courage within me to start going to small groups.
So realizing your need for that support became the origins of getting into small group. What folks don't know necessarily now is that you're actually a leader of a small group. So how did God take you from being anxious about coming into small group to being a leader of a small group?
Well, God has just continued to be faithful. Every time I'm faithful to Him and obedient to Him, it just seems like I get the blessing back trifold. And our small group leader decided that she was going to take some time off, and it opened up an opportunity for God to really kind of push me way outside of my comfort zone. And I ended up being obedient to His call and took the next step and became a small group leader.
God pushing and calling is one thing, but us being obedient is a different thing. And you have been obedient even though it was not easy. And I know that there's joy in obedience too. So what's the joy that you've seen in following God's call on your life?
Well, the joy just comes from knowing that I have been completely relevant for God. Whenever He calls us to do something, we have the ability to either listen to our voices that say we can't or we shouldn't, or we have the option to listen to God's call on our life and let His voice be louder. And just seeing God work in the lives of these ladies and in my life has been a huge blessing, and knowing that I would have missed out on seeing the joy just kind of just tidal wave through our small group, missing that, has been the greatest reward. I mean, just knowing I would have missed that. So
one of the things that you told me that I think is super powerful is that this year-long journey of saying yes to God has been more healing in your life than the last 12 to 14 years all combined. And what I know is that not only have you experienced that healing, but you've been a part of the ladies in your group also experiencing healing and spiritual growth. And I know that that's a reward too. So just one last thing, is there anything with this platform that you would say to the church as you encourage them from your own experience?
I would just say that no matter where you're at in your walk with God, He is calling you to do something. And if you feel Him, calling you and pushing you, in my case, just choose His voice over yours. Choose to listen to what He says you can do and what you're capable of doing versus what you're telling yourself you can't. So His voice is the one that we should listen to, I guess. So,
thanks, Brandi.